school a few days later, Linda asked, "Want to come over to my house and play jump rope with Susan and me?" Molly hesitated. She knew Bennett was waiting for her, but it was such a beautiful spring day, and it had been so long since she had an afternoon off from dog duty. Surely Bennett couldn't do any harm while she was safely in his pen. "Well, I guess it will be okay, just for a little while," she said at last. Jumping rope was fun, and Molly stayed longer than she'd meant to. When she got home, Bennett met her at the end of the driveway, grinning a slobbery doggy grin, and looking very pleased with himself. "How did you get out of your pen?" Molly asked him. She sighed with exasperation when she saw that Bennett had dug an enormous hole and had made himself an escape tunnel out of his pen. "Bad dog," Molly said sternly. "You shouldn't have dug like that." Bennett didn't look the least bit sorry. He barked happily and scampered off to play, while Molly was kicking the dirt back into the hole Bennett had dug. She happened to look over at Mrs. Gopher's victory garden. Her jaw dropped. She walked toward the garden, staring in dismay. The seedlings Mrs. Guilford had tended so long and transplanted so lovingly had been yanked out of the ground. Bulbs were dug up and gnawed. The seed packet labels that used to stand so proudly at the end of every row were torn and scattered. Even the rocks Mrs. Guilford had lined up around the edges of the garden had been knocked every which way. All Mrs. Gilbert's careful work was ruined. It had been torn apart by the paws and jaws of Bennett. Molly kneeled defeated and miserable in the dirt at the edge of what used to be the victory garden. "Looks pretty bad," said Ricky. He was standing behind her. "Yeah," said Molly. "Mrs. Guilford's going to be mad," said Ricky. "Yeah," said Molly again. "You know," Ricky went on, "today is Friday. Mrs. Guilford won't be back until Monday morning. We could clean up this mess and get a good start at replanting everything by Monday if we worked at it this weekend." "You'd help me?" Molly asked. She couldn't believe her ears. "Yeah, well, you'd have to pay me back somehow," said Ricky. "How?" asked Molly. She was surprised, but she was desperate too. "Bennett," said Ricky quickly. "Let me play with him and teach him stuff and help take care of him." Molly didn't answer just then. Bennett ran to her with something in his mouth. He stood in front of her, wagging his tail so hard his whole rear end was moving. He nudged her with his head and wigged with joy when she hugged him. "Oh, I love you so much." Molly knew Bennett loved her too, but she realized that sharing Bennett with Ricky was the right thing for the puppy and for her. "Okay, Ricky, it's a deal." "Good," said Ricky. He sat next to Molly and said to Bennett, "Here, boy." Bennett jumped up on Ricky, smearing dirt all over his shirt. Then he jumped on Molly and dropped what he had in his mouth so that he could lick her face. Molly looked down at her lap and saw one of Mrs. Guilford's gardening gloves, but it had chewed off all the fingers. Molly grinned. She held the glove up to show Ricky and said, "You can start sharing Bennett right now. I think he's been mollycoddled long enough." The end.